Revealed. How a millionaire's hidden kiss with his maid sparked an incredible love story. Samuel Carter stood in the gleaming office of his Silicon Valley mansion, the weight of his title pressing down on him, as if the marble beneath his feet were quicksand. He was a CEO, the man who conquered every boardroom with a mere twitch of his brow, yet an insatiable emptiness gnawed at him. No amount of stock options or glossy press releases could fill the void left by a childhood punctuated by neglect and relentless ambition. The palpable tension of his inherited expectations twisted in his gut. He hated the incessant demands for perfection, the whispers of envy from rivals. As he stared out at the sprawling estate lit by moonlight, intrigue bubbled through him. Eliza, a mere maid in his mansion, embodied a resilience he had always admired. Their late-night conversations shifted something in him. In her humble laughter he found solace. She described her dreams of creativity with vibrant, unfiltered honesty so starkly different from the surface-level discussions he had in the corporate world. "You don't understand," she said one night, being trapped isn't just about money. The burden of his wealth and the facade of success suddenly felt like a gilded cage. He yearned to cast it all aside, but fear of losing everything held him captive. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the weeks unfolded, Samuel grappled with feelings he'd long buried. Every stolen glance with Eliza ignited an ache that conflicted with everything he'd worked for. He wanted her, but the attachments of status weighed heavily on him. Would his colleagues see him as weak? Or worse, as a fraud? Conformity loomed like a dark cloud, demanding he adhere to the role crafted by privilege and expectation. The internal battle raged on. One evening, just a few feet apart in the kitchen, the atmosphere thickened, charged with unspoken words. Their fingers brushed, a mere slip of contact that felt like crossing a canyon. And then the kiss. Feverish yet fleeting, it ignited a firestorm of doubts and desires within him. How could something so synonymous with freedom feel like such a heavy anchor? With the repercussions of societal judgment echoing through his mind, anguish raked through him. He felt both alive and terrified. As the weight of secrecy hollowed him out, shadows began to emerge. Whispers reached his ears about the rumor mill in his company, hidden adversaries ready to expose their relationship. Would they brand Eliza a gold digger? Would this destroy the carefully crafted wall of respect he'd put up? He was terrified of the fallout, of losing both his heartbeat and his empire. Yet, when he looked into Eliza's fierce and hopeful eyes, the fear condensed into a singular pulse of longing. Torn between conformity and this newfound sense of authenticity, Samuel's heart raced with tumult as he realized the specter of his past could come crashing down at any moment. The stakes rose with every beat as he faced an unbearable choice: fold to the pressures surrounding him, or risk it all for the one person who made him feel real. As doubts loomed, alive with potential collapse, the question lingered, gnawing at his very core. Could love dismantle the constructs of power, or would it lead him spiraling into irreparable consequences? Samuel stood in front of the grand mirror lining his office wall, its reflective surface a juxtaposition to the inner chaos swirling within him. The man gazing back wore a perfectly tailored suit, yet he felt like an imposter. Each detail of his life was meticulously crafted, adorned with accolades, but the mirror did not show the turmoil of a heart at war. The kiss with Eliza lingered, a vivid reminder of the humanity he craved but barely knew how to grasp. The echoes of corporate ambition hung thick in his mind, the relentless pursuit of success now mingling with the allure of a simpler life. He returned to his desk only to find himself distracted. Stacks of reports and charts blurred as visions of Eliza flooded in. Her laughter, the contagious spark in her eyes, and the vivid way she described her hopes ignited a storm of desire and uncertainty within him. But the reality of their positions gnawed at him, making him question everything. Samuel had climbed to the pinnacle of success, yet beneath that glittering facade was a vulnerability he had never allowed himself to acknowledge. The idea of exposing this side, of making Eliza a part of his world, filled him with dread. Could I risk it all? He muttered to himself, the words bouncing off the sterile walls. Consumed with self-doubt, he began pacing, his mind spiraling into worst-case scenarios. What if the board found out? What if the media got hold of the scandal and misrepresented Eliza? He couldn't protect her. His heart raced at the thought, but an equal part of him recoiled from the idea of severing the thread that connected them. After hours of turmoil, Samuel finally decided to confront the echoes of society's judgment looming in his thoughts. He knew he had to reassess what he truly valued: the gilded success around him or the emotional depth he desperately sought. Eliza had opened his eyes, showing him that the foundations of a fulfilling life rested not in accolades but in authenticity. He needed a plan, a way to connect with her that would honor them both without marring the fragile relationship with excessive scrutiny. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting red and orange hues across the room, he made a decision, one that felt both liberating and terrifying. That evening, in the warm light of his living room, he sought out Eliza, finding her in the midst of folding fresh linens. The familiar scent of lavender and fabric softener enveloped him, calming his racing heart. Eliza, he began, catching her attention. Can we talk? Her eyes widened, and he noted both curiosity and caution. Of course, Samuel. Is everything okay? Something in her tone urged him on, igniting a flicker of hope. I think we need to be honest with each other about what's been happening. Each word felt like it carried the weight of his decision, a willingness to step into the unknown. As they sat together, the air thick with the promise of truth, Samuel felt the pulse of possibility radiating between them. Tell me how you feel, he murmured, his heart pounding, recognizing that this moment held the potential to change everything. But just then, a knock at the door shattered the fragile intimacy they had woven, and fear sliced through him like ice. The timing was too uncanny, far too coincidental. Who could it be? The unknown shattered the cocoon of courage he thought he had wrapped around them. With the weight of uncertainty bearing down again, Samuel braced himself. Opportunity and risk had converged, and the moment hung delicately in the balance. Would he be prepared to face whatever awaited them on the other side? Samuel's pulse quickened as he exchanged uncertain glances with Eliza. The knock came again, more insistent, drawing the moment into sharp focus. Instinctively, he thought of the board members. Was it one of them? Had someone caught wind of their growing connection? Stay here, he whispered to Eliza, though he wasn't sure if it was for her or himself. He steeled his nerve, straightening his tie and adjusting his posture in a vain attempt to project calm authority. The last slivers of sunlight slipped from view, casting them into twilight. As he opened the door, an unfamiliar man in a dark suit stood before him, his face serious yet inscrutable. Samuel Hartman? Yes. Can I help you? The man stepped inside, holding a folder close to his chest. I'm from security. We need to speak about something urgent regarding your recent visitors. The world around Samuel seemed to dim as anxiety took root in his gut. He turned slightly to glance at Eliza, who remained seated, her expression a blend of concern and confusion. This was precisely the type of disruption he had dreaded, and Samuel could feel the equilibrium he'd begun to establish crumbling like sandcastles before a receding tide. Let us go to my office, Samuel said, a forced authority coating his voice. He ushered the man inside, closing the door behind him. He could sense Eliza's presence lingering just outside the door, a soothing balm that now felt distant and out of reach. And the dim light of his office, Samuel motioned for the man to speak, the weight of countless expectations heavy on his shoulders. What's this about? The man opened the folder, flipping through a few pages before stopping, his finger tapping a small image. We've received reports that there may be a breach regarding personal relationships with staff. We need to ensure compliance with the company policy. Samuel's mind raced, horror and indignation mingling as he tried to grasp the significance of the accusation. How could he have let this situation escalate so carelessly? This was about more than professional decorum. It was about Eliza, too. The woman who had brought him clarity, who had awakened emotions he could no longer ignore, was suddenly at risk. Listen, Samuel asserted, swallowing hard. Eliza is more than just a staff member. He hesitated, the enormity of his feelings crashing down on him like wave on a rocky shore. If he professed the depth of his affection, would it risk everything they had built? I am not engaging in any inappropriate relationships, he managed to say, every word choking on unsaid truths. The man studied him, eyes narrowing. Then you'll understand the importance of cooperating fully with this inquiry. We have a responsibility to uphold the integrity of the firm. Samuel gritted his teeth, anger curling like smoke at the edges of his consciousness. This wasn't just about his reputation, and it soon became clearer that it was about much more than his feelings for Eliza. It was about who he wanted to be, not just as a CEO and a businessman, but as a man capable of vulnerability, connection, and love. Fine, he said with renewed purpose, his voice steady, ask your questions. Whatever it takes. As the man began detailing his inquiries, Samuel felt a surge of determination swell within him. Perhaps this was a moment of reckoning, not just in the face of his responsibilities at work, but also in his life and his relationship with Eliza. As he navigated through each question, he couldn't shake the image of Eliza's smile from his mind. She had inspired him to seek authenticity, and now he needed to be brave enough to extend that authenticity even here among the harsh realities of his world. When the questioning ceased, Samuel returned to find Eliza waiting. Her eyes shone with apprehension, yet also with an undeniable resolve. What happened? I'll share everything, I promise, he replied, taking her hands in his. But first we need to make sense of what this means for us. In that instant, Samuel realized they were standing on the precipice of a critical decision, one that could forge the path of their future together. But suddenly another thought flickered to life in his mind. Could he truly fight for what he wanted without losing everything he had worked for? The question hung between them, an unspoken challenge that demanded resolution. Samuel would have to plot a course that risked it all, not just for Eliza but for himself as well. He mustered his breath, preparing to share his heart, but the storm within was only just beginning. Things are about to change, Eliza, he said, and I need you to believe in what we could become. And with that, he realized that the real confrontation lay ahead, not just with the boardroom or external pressures, but with himself and his true desires. How deep was his commitment to this burgeoning relationship? The next chapter was unfolding, filled with uncertainty, and Samuel was ready to face whatever followed. Would he embrace this turbulence, or would fear dictate his choices? Samuel took a deep breath, bracing himself for whatever lay ahead. The weight of the moment pressed against his chest, tightening the air around him. He had experienced the thrill of excitement in his life, but this was different. This was fear, raw and unfiltered. He knew that every choice he made would ripple through the water, impacting not just his professional life, but the emotional landscape he was beginning to cultivate with Eliza. As he began to speak, recounting the events that had transpired during the security inquiry, he could see Eliza absorb each word with a heavy heart. This was their reality now, a tangled web of aspirations and vulnerabilities. The silent acknowledgement of their circumstances hung between them, both confining yet liberating. Do you think they know? Eliza's question emerged, punctuated by a tremor in her voice. She searched his eyes, seeking comfort among the uncertainty. I don't know, Samuel replied, his mind racing. But whether they do or not, we have to be prepared for the fallout. Eliza, what we have is more than I ever thought I could experience. But there are risks, and I need you to understand how much I value your presence in my life. His admission hung delicately in the air, heavy with significance. Eliza's grip tightened on his hands, and for a moment, they existed in a world exclusive to only them, a protective fortress against external chaos. But Samuel knew that the walls of that fortress were flimsy, easily breached by the relentless scrutiny of their professional environment. With clarity born from turmoil, Samuel resolved to take control of the narrative. We can't let them dictate our future, he asserted, an urge to assert his autonomy bubbling to the surface. I want to protect us. This connection we have is precious, and I can't risk it by neglecting the reality we face together. Eliza looked at him, her expression a mix of admiration and determination. So what do we do? She asked, the challenge igniting within her. We plan, he replied. We'll navigate this together. I have an upcoming meeting with the board. I'll present my vision for the future of the firm, one that emphasizes the importance of innovation and integrity over mere profits. If I can establish my authority and present a strategy that unifies the team, we might just weather this storm. Samuel's mind whirred with ideas as he laid out the groundwork for his presentation. It was more than just a business meeting. It would be the test of his character. He pictured himself standing before the board, exuding confidence while rooted in his truth. The confrontation wouldn't merely be against potential accusations. It was a chance to embrace the authenticity he had long yearned for. "I'll help you," Eliza interjected, feeling the energy shift as her instincts kicked in. "Together we can create something that highlights who you are, not just as a CEO but as a person who values relationships and integrity. The opportunity will provide a foundation for what we're building between us." Resolving to confront the looming challenge, Samuel's pulse quickened with newfound determination. "Yes, we foster a vision of collaboration and respect," he said, excitement replacing some of the underlying fear. But as preparations unfolded, the shadow of doubt lingered in the recesses of his mind. Could he truly turn this situation to his advantage? Or would he risk exposing his vulnerability in a world dominated by harsh scrutiny? The duality of his existence began to collide, CEO versus man in love, the tightrope walks of professional ambition against personal devotion as they immersed themselves in strategy. The lines between his professional life and burgeoning relationship blurred even further, creating a paradox that both thrilled and frightened him. Would he have the courage to uphold both his commitments without losing himself in the process? The moment Samuel recoiled at the thought of the board meeting registering on the horizon, he understood that true bravery lies not just in tackling external pressures but in laying bare the deepest aspirations of his heart. "Samuel," Eliza interjected, her voice cutting through his reverie, "what happens if they don't respond well? What if they decide to?" His heart raced, confronted by her fears. "What if? Then we adapt. We'll figure it out," he reassured, though a tremor of uncertainty coursed through him. In that moment he recognized that they were not merely navigating a professional crisis, but testing the very foundation of their relationship. As uncertainty wrapped around them like a shroud, Samuel sensed that this chapter of their lives was poised on the edge of transformation. "I need to be honest with you, Eliza," he said, "because if we're going to step together through this, I can't afford to hide any part of myself." And just then, as the tension tightened, a new thought flickered in Samuel's mind, a realization that although daring to embrace his truths might dismantle the carefully constructed order of his life, it was also the only way to solidify the connection he craved. How much would he be willing to reveal, and could their relationship withstand the powerful forces at play around them? The unspoken question hovered above them, heavy with implication. This was no longer just about professional integrity. It was about redefining his place in the world alongside Eliza. The boardroom loomed large in Samuel's mind as the day of reckoning edged closer. Each tick of the clock seemed to mock his anticipation, amplifying the pressures mounting from within. The presentation he meticulously crafted was not just a set of slides. It was a manifestation of his identity, a culmination of his values and the evolution he could no longer deny. The night before, sleep had eluded him. Instead, he had paced his apartment, wrestling with self-doubt and the persistent question of his worth. Would his vision resonate? Would the board accept a narrative rooted in integrity over sheer profit? As he rehearsed his points to an empty audience, a flicker of confidence emerged. With each repetition, he saw the purpose behind the words. This was not just about business. It was about creating a legacy. He could be proud of one that aligned with the personal transformation he was embarking on with Eliza. Eliza's unwavering support had anchored him amidst the swirling sea of chaos. In their late-night brainstorming sessions, her insights illuminated paths he had not considered. She challenged him to weave his personal journey into the fabric of his professional ambition. "Share your truth, Samuel. They need to see the man behind the title," she had urged, inspiring him to find the courage to be vulnerable, to show the inevitable cracks in his facade. On the morning of the meeting, he suited up, but the reflection in the mirror didn't match the resolve he wished to project. There was a subtle dissonance, a whisper of doubt clawing at the back of his mind. His heart thudded heavily as he smoothed his tie, a piece of fabric that felt constrictive not just around his neck, but around his identity itself. He wondered how to marry the roles of a confident CEO and a man seeking to honor his emotional ties. As he arrived at the office, the atmosphere was suffused with tension. Colleagues were scattered, some engaged in hushed conversations that only deepened his misgivings. He stood at the door of the boardroom, heart racing, reminding himself of all the conversations he had shared with Eliza, how they had prepared together, so that he could walk in not just as a leader, but as someone committed to building a culture of trust. The support felt palpable, almost like a cloak around his shoulders, urging him forward when he took his seat at the head of the table. Glances from the board members stripped him bare, each stare a reminder of the scrutiny looming over him. He could feel their judgment, the pressure to conform to their expectations of dominance and profit. But with every moment, Samuel felt the grounding presence of Eliza in his mind. He began to speak, his voice steady yet laced with underlying urgency. Today, I want to talk about the direction of our future, not just how we thrive financially, but how we cultivate a workplace that thrives on collaboration, innovation, and integrity. He paused, letting his words hang, daring to meet their eyes, but the silence from the board was deafening, an unseen wall pressing down on him. Samuel noticed Helen, the head of the finance division, with an eyebrow raised, skeptical. A pulse of panic surged. Had he lost them already? The thought of disappointing Eliza, who would be waiting with bated breath, sent a thrill of dread through him. Summoning the strength forged in late-night strategy sessions with Eliza, he pressed on. I believe profit follows passion. When employees feel valued, innovation flourishes out of desire, not obligation. We must foster an environment where everyone feels they are part of something greater. He felt the tide shifting, a flutter of agreement in the silence, and he pushed deeper, sharing personal anecdotes, the risks he had witnessed when compassion was sidelined, the disconnect that eroded morale. By the end of his presentation, the skeptical glances had begun to shift, but an unseen barrier still loomed. Each word he spoke felt like a test, a reflection of his own fears about authenticity. Would they understand that his journey mirrored the very values he was advocating, values Eliza had helped him embrace? As he gathered his notes, a voice pierced the air. Samuel, you present an interesting perspective, but what guarantees do we have that this strategy won't backfire? It was Helen, challenging him with the logics of consequence versus intention, and the thrust of that question struck deep. The moment weighed heavily, pressing against his resolve. Would he continue to push against the tide, risking their rejection and the internal strife that followed? But he saw in that moment that this was the heart of the challenge, the doubt that had long plagued him, the need for affirmation against the very essence of his growth. Because he stated, forcing clarity into his voice, I believe in this. I believe this can work, not just for the firm, but for us as individuals and as a community within these walls. In that instant, Samuel realized that the true risk lay not in vulnerability, but in retreating back into the shadows. He had embarked on this journey not just to secure his position, but to create change not only for himself but for everyone who nestled into the trappings of the so-called professional world. As the conversation intensified, a spark ignited within him. This was a pivotal moment, the tipping point between loss and triumph. The challenge was still unfolding, yet Samuel felt empowered, ready to confront the doubts head-on. But suddenly, as the board began to engage, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if his transparency inspired backlash? What if the very truths that connected him with Eliza turned into weapons for those at the table? The question weighed like stone, threatening to upend the very foundation upon which he had sought to build this new reality. Facing his past and potential fallout would require more than just words. It would demand an unwavering commitment to his vision, to Eliza, and to himself. As the board meeting pressed on, Samuel felt ready to fight for the connection he so cherished, knowing that love and ambition could entwine, but at what cost? The moment it was over, as he left the boardroom, a fresh wave of uncertainty washed over him. Would he emerge a victor? Or would the repercussions of honesty unravel everything he held dear? The stakes had been raised, and the path forward shimmered with both possibility and peril. How far would he continue to walk this tightrope, and would he remain true to the transformation that now felt inevitable? The air in the corridor felt thick as Samuel exited the boardroom, each step echoing within the hollow shell of uncertainty building inside him. Conversations buzzed around him, but they felt distant, muted by the whirlwind of thoughts racing through his mind. What had he done? Did they perceive his vulnerabilities as weaknesses? Would the board support his vision, or had he ignited a firestorm of skepticism that would threaten everything he had worked for? With each passing moment, doubt clawed at him, gnawing away the warmth that had surged during his presentation. He had felt powerful speaking his truth, but now isolation seeped in, pooling in the pit of his stomach. The door to his office loomed before him, an inviting threshold that promised refuge, yet he hesitated. If he closed that door, would it be a retreat into safety or a surrender to fear? Inside, he sank into the chair, the leather cool against his heated skin. It wasn't the perfect solution to his pressure he needed to move, to regain that sense of accomplishment he had felt moments earlier. He grabbed his notebook, pages filled with thoughts and strategies, and flipped to the latest entry. Just the act of writing felt empowering, as if each stroke of the pen could reshape his narrative. His mind drifted to Eliza. How would she react? Would she see the uncertainty masked behind his confident facade? Picking up his phone, Samuel found himself staring at their last exchange. A simple text. "You've got this, Samuel. Speak your truth." He could almost hear her voice encouraging him not just as an employee, but as a person grappling with his multifaceted identity. But the more he thought about how to communicate the outcome of the board meeting, the more pressing his insecurities became. He had put his heart on the line, revealing not only his vision but a piece of himself. The fear of their potential rejection felt magnified. What if by daring to show his authentic self, he became a target for their ambitions? It wasn't just about him anymore. It was about Eliza, their future, and the change he desperately wanted to foster. With a resolve kindled by desperation, he acknowledged that the battle he faced soon would not just be external but internal as well. Would he wade into the complexities of board politics, or guard himself against a possible backlash? The self-preservation instinct was strong, but was stagnation his only alternative? Before he could spiral further, a knock at the door startled him. It was Eric, his trusted advisor. "Can we talk, Samuel?" The weight of the world swirled in Eric's eyes, and Samuel felt a twinge of empathy. This was his chance not only to unburden himself but also to listen. Steeling himself, Samuel let Eric in, embracing the knowledge that the supportive dialogue could contribute to his struggle. As they exchanged insights, he realized he hadn't just been speaking to the board or trying to convince them of his central thesis. He had been transforming himself in the process. Each word he had said was a leap toward redefining not only his professional identity but his self-worth. Samuel could feel a momentum building. Deeper than mere advocacy for his ideas, it was a burgeoning self-acceptance intertwined with accountability. Talking through strategy, addressing potential pushback from the board, Samuel started mapping out next steps. He had initially portrayed his vision as a solitary endeavor, but now he saw the potential for collaborative growth. The insight unfolded within him like the petals of a blossoming flower, and a vision for a company built on partnership, compassion, and shared value grew clearer. In the midst of the discourse, another realization slapped him awake. He had learned to anchor his truth in confidence instead of concealing it beneath layers of professional bravado. As he strategized, he understood the forthcoming confrontation was not just about his presentation but the very foundation of his leadership style. When their conversation ended, Samuel felt lighter, invigorated by this exchange that had taken root in nurturing possibilities rather than fear. Yet even as optimism took hold, a voice in the back of his mind reminded him there was still much work ahead. He was on the brink of an awakening, but would the board embrace this evolution or push back against this new ethos he was foregoing? As he left the office, the uncertainty returned, whispering an insistent question that sent shivers down his spine. Would he stand firm in his newfound clarity when the moment of truth arrived? The tension coiled within him, a promise of inevitable confrontation looming just ahead, pushing him toward a confrontation he could no longer avoid. Samuel now faced a choice that could either affirm or confront his evolution. What would he choose when challenged again? The next morning dawned bright, but the light streaming through Samuel's office window felt harsh, a spotlight on his mounting anxiety. He had barely slept, each hour filled with replayed scenarios from the board meeting, mocking him with voices of doubt. The ringing phone jarred him from this spiraling train of thought. It was Eric checking in. "How are you feeling?" Eric asked, maintaining a steady tone. "Like I'm teetering on a tightrope, waiting for the inevitable fall," Samuel replied, forcing humor into his voice. But the truth lurked beneath the surface. He felt exposed, an unwilling performer in a reality show where his vulnerabilities were broadcast for all to see. We have the chance to redefine what leadership looks like here. Remember that. You've already begun to shift the conversation, Eric encouraged. Samuel sensed the fire in his advisor's words but struggled to fan those flames into his own resolve. Samuel glanced at the notes he had meticulously compiled, each strategy a building block toward the change he desired. He hadn't just envisioned a company thriving on collaborative efforts. He deeply craved to see himself as a leader who embodied this ethos. But doubt remained. Would his value be recognized beyond the walls of that boardroom? Determined to confront this uncertainty head-on, he decided to seek out feedback from those he had yet to engage his team. He needed to find out whether his vision resonated beyond the facade of the presentation. The prospect felt daunting yet liberating. It meant deliberately placing himself back in the fray. "Let us gather the team," he said, his voice firm. "I'm ready to hear their thoughts, to listen as much as to speak." The empowerment of this decision rejuvenated him. He was reclaiming his narrative. As he prepared for the meeting, questions swirled in his mind. How would his team respond to a leader who had shown his weak points? Would they respect his authenticity, or would they regard his honesty as uncertainty? In the conference room, faces turned to him. Some were curious, others apprehensive. Samuel took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I want to talk about the vision I shared at the board meeting, and hear your thoughts on our direction." The silence that followed felt thick, yet he pressed on. "Your perspectives matter greatly to me. I realize that it's not just about my vision, it's about how we can collectively shape our future. What do you think?" As he opened the floor for discussion, the initial hesitancy melted away. A flood of ideas, concerns, and insights emerged from his team, creating a dynamic dialogue. Each comment they offered amplified his understanding of their fears and hopes, unearthing hidden treasures of creativity and collaboration. One staff member, Julia, spoke up, her voice steady. "I appreciate your honesty, Samuel. This isn't just about numbers or market shares for us. It's about how we can contribute as individuals and become a unified force. We need a leader who encourages us to take risks." In that moment, Samuel recognized the shift. He was not merely conveying a vision but co-creating it. Each exchange sparked a deeper realization. Vulnerability could be a strength. In sharing his insecurities, he encouraged others to voice their own. Their enthusiasm elevated him, transforming apprehension into empowerment. The session continued long after Samuel had anticipated, each remark solidifying the foundation for the future he envisioned. Yet as the meeting concluded, a weight still clung to him. What if the board resisted this collective approach? Would they embrace his vision, now formed and influenced by those he led? As everyone filed out, Samuel caught Eric's eye. The unspoken doubt mirrored his own. Did they see this as a mere ideal or a real commitment to change? That thought ignited another flicker of determination. Samuel was now poised to brave the ultimate challenge, not just to confront the board's potential resistance but to assert that leadership isn't only about authority. It's about communal growth. Could he bear the psychological weight of a possible clash? The very core of his leadership style would be tested in the boardroom once more, where his evolution would truly face scrutiny. As he sat down to gather his thoughts, he realized the journey had only just begun. The next confrontation loomed, now fueled by a clearer sense of purpose. Would his hard-won confidence withstand the inevitable storm? Samuel's heart raced as the gravity of his choices bore down on him. The moment of truth was close at hand. Samuel's heart pounded as he replayed the last moments of the team meeting in his mind. They had shared their thoughts and dreams, weaving threads of hope through the fabric of his vision. However, the exhilaration of that exchange was quickly overshadowed by what lay ahead. Gripping the edge of the conference table, he mentally prepared for the showdown at the board meeting, a gathering that felt like stepping into the ring for a heavyweight title fight. Revisiting the boardroom's austere atmosphere, Samuel recognized the challenge he faced. The board members were rooted in their ways, entrenched in traditional power dynamics. They had grown accustomed to a leadership style that valued strength over vulnerability, authority over collaboration. Would they see the merit in his approach, or would he come away from this battle bruised and defeated? The day of the meeting arrived with a grim finality, the office buzzing with nervous energy. As he dressed that morning, Samuel adjusted his tie with resolve. Today was not merely about presenting a vision. It was about showcasing the evolution of his leadership style. He was prepared for the pushback, his heart filled with a mixture of anticipation and dread. Entering the boardroom, he encountered the usual suspects. Faces that held the echoes of past meetings, pressing expectations solidifying a wall between them and the changes he aimed to introduce. He took a moment to breathe and anchor himself in that feeling of collaborative power he had discovered with his team. If he wanted to convince the board, he had to embody the very ethos he sought to promote. "Thank you all for being here today," Samuel began, his voice steadier than he felt. "I appreciate your continued commitment as we navigate the future of our company." The board members nodded, their faces a blend of skepticism and intrigue. He transitioned into the crux of his presentation, an amalgamation of strategies that highlighted collaboration, risk-taking, and vulnerability. As he outlined each component, he anticipated the critical questions that would arise. Their sharp intellects were likely to dissect his vision with surgical precision. He had to prove that this approach wasn't just an idealistic whim. It was grounded in reality. A familiar face broke the silence. "Samuel, you've always been a results-oriented leader. How do you expect this shift in approach to yield tangible benefits?" It was Carter, a board member known for his no-nonsense style, a formidable opponent in the realm of corporate strategy. Samuel felt the heat rise within him. This was the very query he had anticipated, an opening to demonstrate how deeply he valued both results and people. "By encouraging risk-taking and empowering my team, we foster innovation. When individuals feel their contributions matter, their engagement skyrockets. It's not just about profits. It's about creating a thriving culture that leads to sustainable success." Carter arched an eyebrow, appearing unconvinced. "That sounds good on paper, but what about accountability? How do you ensure that this culture doesn't create chaos?" "Accountability is paramount," Samuel replied, locking eyes with Carter. "In fact, it's a core tenet of my proposal. This isn't about letting go of structure. It's about engaging the entire organization in a way that aligns with our goals." The conversation blossomed, questions flying back and forth like a lively tennis match. Each exchange resonated, and he began to notice the subtle shifts in the room. A begrudging respect flickered across some faces, while others remained entrenched in skepticism. Yet, no matter their skepticism, they were engaged. He was sparking thought as the meeting crawled on. One thought gnawed at Samuel. He was exposing himself in ways he never had before. Uncertainty echoed through him, but he reminded himself that this was his truth. Leadership didn't mean being unassailable. It meant navigating the complexity of human emotion and interaction. By the time they wrapped up, exhaustion mingled with exhilaration. The board did not give him a definitive answer, but the lingering energy in the room spoke volumes. He had planted the seeds of change, even if the fruits wouldn't emerge immediately. Exiting the boardroom, Samuel felt a mixture of triumph and apprehension. He had confronted his fears, displayed vulnerability, and advocated for a vision fraught with potential growth yet grounded in accountability. And as he approached Eric, who waited just outside the door, Samuel's heart raced anew. "I did my best, but now I wonder, what if they decide to reject everything I laid out?" Eric smiled, a glimmer of reassurance in his eyes. "This isn't the end, Samuel. You've started a conversation. This will take time." Deep down, however, that single seed of doubt was growing. What if, despite the progress, the board's decision could undo everything he had fought to establish? The storm of uncertainty churned within him, and he was left questioning whether his newfound direction could withstand pressure and scrutiny. Thus, as he stepped away from the conference room, a provocative question loomed large. Would the board's ultimate decision affirm his leadership evolution or unravel his now fragile vision? The following days were a blur of anticipation and self-doubt. Samuel pored over the feedback notes from the board meeting, scrutinizing every word for signs of acceptance or rejection. Despite Eric's reassurances, a gnawing unease clawed at his mind. He had put himself out there, a rarity in his previous approach, and what if it had been all in vain? Each tick of the clock resonated with mounting tension as he awaited the board's final decision. In the quiet of his office, Samuel endeavored to channel his feelings into productive energy. He lined up meetings with individual team members, aiming to reinforce the collaborative culture he had portrayed in that pivotal meeting. Instead of waiting to see if the board's decision would obliterate his vision, He resolved to shift his focus inward and nurture the budding culture around him. "Samuel, you've changed," Joy, one of his employees, remarked as they sat across from each other in a coffee shop during their meeting. "You're more present, like you really care about what we think." Her words sparked a flicker of pride within him, reminding him that the ripples of his vulnerability were indeed affecting those around him, even if the boardroom was shrouded in uncertainty. "I realize that I can't do this alone. Your insights are just as important as mine," he replied, the warmth of his honesty mixing with a renewed determination. Emboldened by the conversation with Joy, he scheduled follow-up discussions with his team. They shared ideas, offered feedback, and sketched out actionable plans based on the vision he had presented. Each moment strengthened his resolve, and the more he engaged with them, the more he reassured himself that change was possible. As days turned into weeks, the lack of word from the board became a persistent weight on his shoulders. Samuel felt an impending deadline. The board's response hung over him like storm clouds, threatening to burst. What would happen if their decision was unfavorable? Could he return to the rigid, traditional structure he had fought so hard to dismantle? The idea of retreat felt like a betrayal to the team and to himself. He swung by the office one night after hours, hoping to clear his mind amidst the echoes of industry. Sitting alone in the dim light, he reviewed the notes he had compiled, the suggestions, the dreams, the unacknowledged fears of his colleagues. A storm was brewing inside him, but amid the tumult, clarity began to emerge. He could either cling to the approval of the board, or he could advocate relentlessly for the vision he had fought to create. The phone buzzed, breaking his train of thought. It was Eric, asking if he could stop by. Samuel didn't hesitate. He needed a sounding board, someone who had seen him navigate this transformation. When Eric arrived, Samuel divulged his mounting anxiety over the board's silence. "Why do you feel their decision defines you?" Eric asked, leaning back in his chair with an air of confidence. "Your leadership isn't validated by the board. It's molded by those who believe in you. Your team is the foundation, not those resistant to change." His words lingered in the air, expanding within Samuel's mind. It took him a moment to absorb this truth. His responsibility lay not in appeasing the board's outdated perceptions, but in nourishing his team's aspirations. Yet, the board's judgment loomed still, and the anxiety that gripped him didn't dissipate entirely. As he navigated this psychological paradox, he realized he was at a precipice. On one side, the hope of a modernized, thriving company, and on the other, a return to traditional stagnation. As they finished their discussion, Samuel's gaze flickered to the window. The sky had darkened, the clouds swirling ominously, much like his thoughts. But what he didn't know was that the following day would expose a hidden truth, one that could either reaffirm his resolve or unravel everything he had painstakingly built. Little did Samuel realize, the board meeting he had dreaded the most would soon lead not only to critical choices over his professional future but distant whispers of new personal revelations. Samuel stood atop the balcony of his spacious penthouse overlooking the bustling city. The skyline glittered in the twilight, but all he could focus on was the voice of the board members echoing in his mind. The wait was finally over, and the board's decision had just trickled down to him through official channels. It was a unanimous vote in favor of his vision. A deep breath filled his lungs, flooding him with an intoxicating sense of relief and vindication. He had done it. He had fought for what he believed in, and that very belief had earned him respect. It was in this moment he understood the truest depth of vulnerability, the willingness to stand up for what mattered, regardless of the outcomes. No longer confined by the rigid expectations of his title, Samuel felt an invigorating clarity. He hadn't strutted down the aisle of power. He forged connections, and now he aimed to nurture them further. The news had sparked a new flame deep within him. It was a pivotal moment to leverage this victory, not solely as a status update but as an authentic personal triumph. Turning away from the city view, he paced the polished floors of his living room. With every stride, he reflected on how far he had come, redirecting his energy away from merely seeking approval. Instead, he embraced the beauty of collaboration, something Eliza had instilled in him from the very start. He could almost hear her vibrant laughter interspersed with the seriousness of their conversations on dreams and aspirations. This call to action surged forth within him. He had a company to lead, yes, but more importantly, he had a team that needed to understand the implications of this shift. He grabbed his phone and texted Eliza, brimming with excitement. Let us celebrate. We're on the path to a transformative future. Their journey had forged a bond stronger than titles and expectations. A sense of camaraderie and admiration had blossomed between them, and now he sought to invite her into his world fully. He envisioned an open meeting with the team, a platform to openly discuss their next steps together. Samuel would share not just the board's approval, but the renewed importance of inclusivity and trust. Days later, the conference room abuzz with conversations mirrored the dynamic Samuel envisioned. He entered with a purpose, prepared not only to reveal the green light from the board but also to celebrate the triumph they had built together. As his team settled, he began his presentation, grounding it in authenticity. I never truly understood the power of collaboration until you each voiced your thoughts and dreams, he opened, surveying their faces filled with curiosity and encouragement. With your support and the board's trust, we're shaping a future that reflects our shared values. This isn't just about profits. This is about cultivating a workplace that cherishes each input and thrives on innovation fostered by collaboration. Applause erupted after his speech, not for the mere corporate success but for the realization that they were part of something transformative. Eliza's presence resonated deeply in that moment. She had inspired Samuel to accept himself fully. His journey for authenticity wasn't solely about personal growth, it was about igniting that fire in others as well. The recognition of the staff's role propelled him to new depths of fulfillment. He saw in their eyes that his journey had become theirs, a shared trajectory toward success. He relished this newfound confidence, bolstered by external validation. He transformed into a leader who encouraged honesty, who valued the diverse voices surrounding him. As weeks turned into months, the culture evolved, proving that genuine engagement catalyzed productivity. Not only had he shaped his corporate landscape, but he had also reinforced his understanding of love, what it meant to cherish and uplift those who brought joy into his life. Just as exciting as the workplace growth was the shift within him, Samuel found balance. He no longer felt the suffocating need to craft an impeccable image. He embraced vulnerability, seeing it as a strength. It ignited a self-security previously overshadowed by self-doubt. His relationship with Eliza flourished amidst this transformation. There was no longer a delicate dance of shadows between them. Each conversation fell easily into a rhythm of shared ambitions, and his future felt bright in a quiet moment together. Samuel took Eliza's hand, holding it gently. It's all thanks to you. You saw what I couldn't see, the worth of authenticity over pretense. You helped me free myself from that gilded cage. Her smile lit up the room. You navigated this path, Samuel. That courage comes from within, even when you're surrounded by doubt. That affirmation grounded him, solidifying his full-circle transformation. Samuel had accomplished his goal, but the journey of personal fulfillment did not end there. He had planted roots in the fertile soil of collaboration, love, and authenticity, and now the blooming future called to him with Eliza by his side. It beckoned brighter than ever before. You need to subscribe now to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that will inspire you in your own journeys of overcoming. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for real personal transformations. Comment below your reactions or theories about this. Ending your thoughts matter. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. These stories of personal growth need to reach those who are ready to embrace their own authentic lives.